result of father absence. More likely to be children more likely to be crime. Children 2 times more likely to drop out of high school. Children have a better self-worth. Yeah.
It shows up on here.
It shows up. Mine's not getting the questions either.
You're not getting the questions. Can you reboot it? Quick?
Is this the next day?
That's just for Zoom.
Right. So this shouldn't be a trick question, is it? Which is not a common result. Children have a worse self-esteem or less self-esteem when they don't have a responsible father in the household. So this question is kind of a reverse question, if you would, and that's what is not a common result. And certainly, when we have that responsible father in the household who's being attentive to his child's needs, who's nurturing his children, the self-esteem of that child is going to be up, right? It's going to be up. When you have a dad who's using appropriate discipline, when we have a dad who's using effective listening skills, when we have a dad who's engaged with his activities, not just in the household, but outside the household, all that factors into that young man or that young lady feeling better about who she or who he is. So this question was written in reverse. So certainly when we see that we don't have a responsible father in the household, we tend to not see the self-worth of those individuals on a higher level than we should. Jump in with any questions or comments as we go through this. Again, this is for us to talk as we go through it, okay?
Which is not a common result of father absent homes. Okay.
Certainly, when we have a father in the household, they're more likely to commit, when he's not there, they're more likely to commit crimes. We do see that in the data. We do see dropout rates are up when we don't have a responsible father in the household. Okay. We do see that drug and alcohol use goes up. We don't have a father in the household. We don't see this. All right. We're good there? Yes. Let's go to the next one.
Come on, baby girl.
All right. There should be music playing in the background. I don't know what happened to that. Okay. Children of father absent homes are at a higher risk of poverty. This is a true or false question.
Yeah, there's some music.
Yeah, I'm good. Again, no trick questions here. Okay, true. Everybody got it right. Absolutely. You know, we certainly see that when fathers still account for 60% of household income. There are certainly more mothers in the workplace right now. There's certainly more women graduating from post graduate universities and colleges. But fathers still account for 60% of household income on average. So losing that amount of income in your household is definitely going to put strain on that mom and on those children. And we have seen in the data that families who do not have that responsible father in the household, they are more likely to fall at or below the poverty line. And I think if we're in Florida, Ohio, Illinois, DC, this probably bears out nationally. Questions, comments? All right, let's go to the next one. We had no wrong answers yet, right? So we had 100% so far, Jeff? Okay.
It's a good group.
Good group, yeah, smart group, man. No trick questions here. Another true or false. Children in absent households are less likely to have behavioral problems. They're less likely to have behavioral problems. True or false?
Can you get the mic a little centered and up?
I'm sorry. I forgot about those. Children in absent father homes are less likely to have behavioral problems.
False.
Don't give me the answer out loud. It's false. I got two there.
My bad.
My answer is false. They're certainly in father absent households, they are more likely to have behavioral problems. More likely to have behavioral problems. Again, if you go into any of the Responsible Fathers or National Father Initiative websites, and you go look at the data centers, you'll certainly see that, especially among our young men, our young boys who don't have that father in the household. The first question we had them about risky behavior, being involved in those activities out in the streets, are more at risk for those activities. but behavioral issues in school, behavioral issues in the community, and also behavioral issues at home tend to rise when you don't have that responsible father at home. The correct answer here is false. And we did have two that said true. That's okay. We're doing good.
I'd be interested in why they said true.
Still not. Who said true?
I did it on accident.
Mom wouldn't let me push that. Mom's tapping the screen, so I'm laying down here. I haven't been able to answer.
Can you get back in?
Mom wouldn't let me. I'm in the bed zone over here. Right
A little nuance. I don't want to say just the presence of a man, but is it a quality issue of father type, or just the fact the father's in the home?
I would say, and then I'm open up to the floor. I would say it could be a little bit of both: the presence of the man in the household,
And the quality of that presence.
and the activity that the quality of time. You know, we
Okay.
always measure quantity of time or quality of time, and what we say to our dads is that the quality of time is more important than the quantity of time. You know, so has anyone ever heard of the? Go ahead, sir.
No, I was just father engagement is very difficult to measure. I mean, just some of the things that we in this industry sometimes struggle with is, a lot of people will say, "Oh, you're having these events and you're doing this, and you're doing that. How can you prove to me that after this event is over, this guy's spending more time with his kids?" Well, and the answer is kind of like, I really can't prove it, but I know he was here today with his kids, and I know that he, was doing some positive things, and probably we gave him some tools to maybe help him in the future. But I mean, those kind of questions, there's nothing wrong with your question, but I mean, those kind of questions are very hard to answer. Like, is it just that there's a father there, or can you tell me it's definitely a good father? Well, I mean, I would, a lot of times I come back with, I don't know if all the mothers are good mothers either. but so I mean, the same thing is getting them in the home is a start. It's a good start.
That's a great answer. It's a start. Being present is a start. Just being there gets you more than 50% along the way. Just being there on a daily basis, and we can work on those other things, right? We can work on how to engage, how to listening skills, how to communication skills. We can certainly work on those other things. Yes, sir.
When that question is asked, what are the behavioral problems gathered from? Is that school? Is that
Across the board, they're looking at school.
Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry. If you can just repeat his question, that way our Zoom audience also can hear what you're answering.
Okay. So
Thank you.
The question was, and correct me if I get it wrong, are those behavior issues only reserved to the school?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm responding back, and everyone else can chime in, is that no, that those issues are behavior issues are seen in the community as well as in the school as well as in the home. And it could be from just not doing your chores, not coming in on your time that you're told to come in as far as your curfew, not cleaning up the room as you were told to clean up the room. So those kind of behavioral issues. So across the board.
that leads me to wonder, because social interaction can lead to, like, you don't just pop up in a game, you don't just pop up in those things. So it made me wonder if there's a correlation between, like, what would a homeschool child be if they didn't have a dad in the home? How would they look out in the community? How would they pop up on this skill as far as the game?
He's being homeschooled.
Yeah, like if who you're around kind of influences that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Peer pressure associations, those certainly do come into play.
Have those same correlations.
Lack of pro-social interactions
Right.
can cause, I think, some behavioral issues.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Anti-social behavioral issues or pro-social behavior issues. So
as you go out into the community, if you don't know how to interact with people, it can start to cause some confusion as well.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like you said, you are constantly interacting with close community and other gangs. So I think it could kind of go both ways.
we need to first get them to be home, and I think that's the first part of this issue is to get them to be at that home, in that home with that child day in and day out. And if they're engaged in a fathering program, we can work through some of those other things with them. And we have, at least I've heard, where mothers who come into our group, we do an end of the semester, we run 2 semesters. So at the end of our semester, we do a big family dinner. We do our Christmas dinner where the mothers and the kids will come in, and then we do our end of the year. Next month in June will be our Father's Day cookout, and all the dads from our 2 counties will come. There's not a time when a mother doesn't come up to me and say, what did you do to him? What are you guys doing to him? Because they see the change at home. I always, me and my co-facilitators, we always say that we are like a good culinary school. You know, we look at ourselves as being chefs. I can tell you time and temperatures and how long you're supposed to sear it and caramelization. But guess what? You're going to then have to take this and go home and cook it yourself. So we always look at ourselves as being a good culinary school. We're going to show you how to put these different ingredients together: communication, discipline, quality time versus quantity of time. We'll go through those things with the dads. But then he has to go home and do that. He has to be able to cook that grilled cheese sandwich on his own. Make sense?
Excellent.
Okay. Next one.
Excellent. Next.
There we go.
Thank you.
This is multiple selection. Again, some of these questions have multiple answers to them. So who is best to facilitate a fatherhood group? Who is best? Someone who's committed to fatherhood? Someone who's trained in fatherhood? Someone who is a father? Someone who's invested in the agency's goals? This is a trick question. We got a little bit of
Wow.
Oh, so you can choose more than one.
You can choose more than one. Yeah, multiple selection. Yeah. Look, and this is probably one of the more great questions that we have on the slide, because a lot of people say, well, you got to be a father in order to run a fatherhood program. Is that true, ladies? Do you have to be a father? It's good to have someone who does have experience in being a father to facilitate that group, but it's not a necessity. You know, we certainly want someone who's committed to fatherhood programming. We want someone who's committed to the importance of fatherhood. We certainly want someone who's at least had some training. The gentleman who works with me, we both trained in fatherhood programming that we use, and also facilitation. Whatever agency that you're with, they have their own goals. You heard a little bit about out there with Kim talking about data. They have their goals too. And if you, like I am, if you depend on grant funding, you better know what your agency goals are. You better know what those goals are. And you better be meeting with your director, your case manager, your financial person in an agency to make sure you're meeting those goal requirements. Because if not, you know, yeah, you may not be back. So I always say to my groups, especially for those persons who are aspiring to go into group facilitation, find out from your agency what their goals are. Find out what their expectations are from you, you know. And don't say, well, last semester we did this. We all know that as fiscal years change, as the calendar changes, those fiscal demands change as well. So make sure that you're always checking on your agency, finding out what they want from you. If you're meeting those goals, you're meeting those expectations from them. If your facilitator is a dad, that's great. That's a bonus. That's a cherry on top of the cupcake. That's your cherry. If he is a facilitator, when I first came into doing this, when I do a jail-based program and I do my community-based program, well, my community-based program was being run by a woman, and she was like, when I came in, she said, "Well, I'm glad you're here. You could take that man-to-man mentoring piece," and you're going to see some of that on one of the later slides. That is important. And you know, we always do our one-on-one sessions with our men, whether it's going taking them out to coffee or taking them out for lunch. We want to make sure that if it's something in the classroom they did not want to share, that they have an opportunity to share that with us on a more personal one-on-one basis. So we do our group sessions, but also we do our one-on-one sessions as well. Any of you ever do one-on-one sessions with your participants at all? One-on-one, yeah. So this is our little maybe trick question, I guess. All right, go to the next one, Jack. You're still doing good. Everyone's doing great. True or false? Fatherhood facilitator should have a good community awareness. This is your softball question. This is just,
Should knock it out the park.
Fatherhood facilitator should have a good community awareness. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, Talbot County. I was contacted by a group down in St. Mary's County. Anyone familiar with Maryland at all geographically? Well, St. Mary's County is about another hour from here. I'm an hour from here. So it's about a 2-hour drive. So I was contacted by a group in St. Mary's County. They went on our website and they said, hey, we got some federal dollars. We want to put together a fatherhood group. Would you be interested in coming down and speaking with us about it? So we did a Zoom meeting. And I think in their grant requirements, again, know your agency goes, right? It had to be 10 hours of face-to-face a week, which is not difficult to meet. But I'm 2 hours away. I'm 2 hours away. It's a 2-hour drive over and 2-hour drive back. I've never lived in St. Mary's County. I don't know anything about their court systems. I don't know anything about their, So I respectfully declined. And I said to this group, I said, find somebody familiar with your county. I said, it's important that that facilitator knows where your drug treatment places are, where your transitional houses are, where your bus stops are, or train stops, or metro, whatever the case may be. He should have as much community knowledge as possible. So it's always good to find that facilitator who understands the community that he's working for. He's working for these men. So if they come to him with a housing issue, he needs to know, okay, we're in our neighborhood, who does housing here? If they have an issue with child support, he needs to know where's DSS, who in child support do I go to for this person? Sometimes you're a conduit, sometimes you're just a pass-through to get them to where they need to be. So having that good understanding of community is vitally important for that facilitator. Would you agree? Yes, you do, because everybody got it right. Next question.
All right.
You got a hold of this thing now.
I think so.
This is multiple selection. Multiple selection means there's more than one. There could be more than one right answer. There could be more than one. Who benefits from fatherhood programs? The community, the children, the participant, the mother. Who's benefiting from this program? Again, we're answering the question why, right? Why do we have fatherhood programs? Why are we coming here once a year and doing this? Why do we go to these conferences or work sessions? A little bit across the board again. The correct answer is all of them, right? Participant, the community, the children, the mother, all benefit from a father who's engaged in a fathering program. As I said to you before, I shared with you before, when we have our annual end of semester dinners, it has not been a time when a mother or girlfriend hasn't come up to me and said, what are you guys doing with him? He's more patient with the kids. He doesn't get upset the way he used to. He's more he comes in the kitchen now, helps me, prepare dinner. What are you doing differently with him? And like a good culinary school, we're just showing him the right ingredients. He has to now go home and do it. Again, data. It tells us that children who have engaged, responsible, nurturing fathers do better across the board, from their behavior to their mental health to their school outcomes. They do better. The community, as Kim said, this is an outward movement. We start from the man who becomes the father, who will become the husband, if you do it in the ideal way, right? The boy, the man, the husband, and then the father, right? But the community benefits from that as well. When we have responsible fathers who are in tune to their emotional health and their mental well-being, and then putting the time to invest in themselves, then that pays off for the community as well. I do a lot of speaking with Rotary groups and businesses, and I always talk to them about disposable income. Right now, everybody, my family, your family are watching those dollars, right? You're watching where that money's being spent. Having that father home, 2-family incomes do better than single-family incomes. We all know that. That's simple math. But you still need those disposable dollars to go out to that restaurant, to go buy that pair of tennis shoes, to go buy that article of clothing. So to those business owners, when I go speak with them, I say the reason why you should invest in fathering programs, the reason why you should support fathering programs, because in doing that and keeping that father there with that family engaged allows them to have the disposable dollars to then go watch your movie, to go buy their sneakers, to go to your restaurant. So I make them a stakeholder, and saying to them, if you want these families to come to your stores, to your restaurants, then you need to support what we're doing. Make sense? So, and certainly the participant, you know, we've had dads who've gone off and started their own businesses. We've had dads who've gone into counseling. We have a young man right now, and every time I talk about him, I get swelled up. You know, he was in our jail-based program. He came out. He was on house arrest. We Zoomed him into our program through Zoom. He was there every night through Zoom. He came out when he got released from house arrest. He came into and now he's gone back to school. He's gotten his counseling degree, his certificate. I'm sorry, and he's working for now a drug rehab. So, and it's just when you hear stories like that, and you see young men who made that change, you can't help but just start getting. Me and my facilitator, we were on our way to Dorchester County, which is right below Talbot County. We were out we came by him at a light, and we rolled down the window, and he yelled at us, we yelled at him, and he was on his way to class, and we were on our way to class. And that was just like, man, look at him. Look at this young man, where he was before to where he is now. Okay.
Next slide. All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, we doing great. Corey is knocking out the park. Why do men join fathering programs? Okay. Why? You know, what are they getting out of it? You know, we feed them. We do lunch. We do dinner. They never had a nurturing and a loving father to sharpen one's fathering skills. No constant father figure in the home. None of these. All of these are true except the green. Men join fathering programs. If anyone is familiar with National Fatherhood Initiative, when you look at NFI's logic model, when they look at why they started NFI, Chris Brown and going back further, one of the first things they talk about was that the three categories of men that come into fathering programs. And that first category of those men who never had a nurturing, loving father in their household. They don't know what that man sounds like, what the man looks like, how that man hugs, how that man forgives. They never had it. You know, they see Heathcliff Huxtable, they think that's just TV. You know, that's no father who's going to sit down and talk to his sons about their feelings and talk to his daughters about, you know, being a better woman. That doesn't happen because he's never seen it. The second type of father is that man who may have had that coach or that pastor or that uncle, may not have had that father in his home on a consistent daily basis, but he does know that person exists in real time, in real life, because he's seen it. He's seen that coach, he's seen that pastor, he's seen that deacon, he's seen that uncle. So he knows that type of person does exist. The third type is what I call my MLBers, Major League Baseball, right? MLBers. And those are the men who just want to sharpen their skills. Just like me. You know, my father was in my household all my life. My father died at 94 years old. And my mother was married for 43 years. You know, my father wasn't a beater, a binder, a boozer. You know, but he only had an 8th grade education. You know, sharpening one's fathering skills is why we want to be in groups like this. That's why I come here. Because I know I don't know everything. So I'm always wanting to rub up against someone else who maybe knows something, does something a little better or a little different than the way I do it, so I can learn. So coming to fathering groups like this, for me, is a way to sharpen my skills, sharpening my fathering skills. And that's what we want to do in our small group settings, is to have these men come together. We have men who are in our groups who are in their teens. Our youngest guys, what, Rick, 18? We have men in our groups who are in their 40s. We have men in our groups who are in their 60s, or grandfathers who have children who are now coming back home, and they find themselves parenting now their grandchildren. So sharpening one's fathering skills, those MLBs, as I call them. There are 30 Major League Baseball teams in America, right? 30 of them. Every single team has a batting coach, right? Why? These guys are getting paid millions of dollars. Why do you need a batting coach? Because there's always room for improvement. Kyle Ripken and Tony Gwynn, some of the great baseball hitters that we had, they still have room for improvement. So I always say I want to get a t-shirt to say, excuse the mess, I'm still under construction. He's still working on me, excuse the mess. So And they never had a consistent father figure in the household. So we want to be mindful that the men who are coming into our group are not all coming from one stream. You know, some who may have had that there in the household, who just want to get better at being a father, better at being a partner. There's some who never had that responsible father at all. And to them, when you start talking about a father who's nurturing, who's loving, who puts them in bed at night, you know, who takes them to ball games, they're like, my father never did any of that. You know, and I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Pack. I never had that in my life. You know, I had a young man on my jail-based program. We ended last month, and he looked at me and he said, I wish I would have had this before I got here. Maybe he doesn't make the choices that he made that got him there. Right? Yes, ma'am.
My husband was not in my life and my children's life, and both my kids were boy and a girl. My son is 48, my daughter 43. As they grew up, my son was at Mehari Medical School and he just crashed. And because the whole time he was going to school, he had hard time to know how to treat a woman, how to talk. So whenever there is an argument, he runs. And so what I really ended up learning is, because there was no man in the house, when he went for internships, he didn't know how to operate in the office. But my father used to take me to his office when I was young. So I joined the National Mental Health Association to just help my son. He's 48 now. He's calm and everything, but he still has fears of how do you fight when you're married.
Anybody want to take that?
No, say the question again.
Well, she was giving a statement about her son 48, 49, and never had a dad at home, and now in their professions, they find some difficulties when relating to that culture with men. Because they never had a father in the household growing up.
Doesn't know how to, the role of the dad.
The role of the father. And if you look, you know, we've all seen that picture with the footprints in the sand. And if you never had that man to follow, to emulate, how do you know? How do you know? Again, my father died at 94 in 2022, 8th grade education. This would be foreign to my father. You know, he was a World War II guy. His father was born out of slavery, first generation. Fathers, men coming together like this, my father had basically had no use, so he didn't see the importance of it. And again, that's why I talk about sharpening one's iron. Iron sharpens iron, as the word says. So for me, I love my father to death. You know, he got me through those first couple seasons of my life, but I knew there was more. For being a father, being a husband, I knew there was more.
I have a question. Iron sharpens iron, I got that, right? That's one part of it. But the other side is compassion and love and men owning their femininity, their feminine aspect of themselves. If we have iron sharpening iron on one side, what do we need to say on the other side? How can we language that? Because we have to have a space, because that's what's missing, right? We have this hyper masculinity that's killing all of us. It's not working, right? So when black men use the European model for manhood, it creates havoc, domestic violence. So my question to you and to the audience is, how can we wordsmith the complement to iron sharpens iron? What is the complement to that on the other side?
So the question from Dr. O is that if we do know scripture, iron sharpens iron, then what's the other side to that? Is that what you're asking? Anybody?
The feminine side, the compassion side.
Compassion side.
Just a quick response. Men should express their feelings. Hug your children. Kiss your children. Talk with your children. One advice I gave to my son is be the compassionate father. His son did something terrible. He had a choice to discipline him severely or hug him and saying, we all make mistakes, son. Don't do it again.
As great as my father was,
I was gonna say, to practice humility.
Oh, man. Yeah,
Uh,
we talk about that.
because from my experience, when this culture that we live in here in this country is based on like egotism and stuff like that, and pride, and it can destroy men, and I've seen it happen. It almost destroyed me. But once I got to a certain level of humility, and I calmed myself and I started listening more, and as the gentleman said, being more compassionate and understanding, I could discipline my children the way mom and grandma disciplined me because my father wasn't around. And so I had to be different in terms of, I had to do some things different in terms of how I fathered. And so, I couldn't come with the ironclad fist. I had to be humble, but stern.
Firm but fair.
Firm but fair.
There's certain things I'm not getting ready to tell you is okay. Because we already know what that'll lead to. And so I don't know, I think that getting to the level of humility.
I agree. That's all right. Taco?
Thank you so much for that.
I'm just gonna pull the next slide
I'm
up.
reminded, and I haven't read this book in some time. There's a book called Man of Steel and Velvet that's talking about the life of Jesus Christ. And I remember reading that book as a young man and really giving me the balance. Get a book that would kind of have, discuss this topic of the balance of the two. Man of Steel and Velvet, yeah.
Man of Steel and Velvet. Look. Well, we're on one. Yeah, one person got that wrong. Okay. I'm surprised you got that wrong.
I bet you it's a woman. I bet you it's a woman.
Hey, look. As I said, and I apologize for talking about my father too much, but he was my hero in my life. My father worked 43 years at Bethlehem Steel and married my mom for almost 50 years. When my mom passed in 99, we had a Thanksgiving dinner at my father's house. So all my brothers, my sister-in-laws came over. And my one sister, I have a brother who's 15 years my senior. He's 77 now. And my sister-in-law said to my dad, Pop, could you tell my husband that you love him? And my father, kept a roof over his head, kept food on his stomach, and kept clothes on his back. My sister-in-law said, no. Pop, my brother's sitting there. My brother by this time is in his 60s, right? Can you tell my father, my husband, that you love him? Your daughter side, right? Now my father showed us this, what a man should do. He wasn't a beater, he wasn't a binder, he wasn't a boozer. I mean, he liked this guy, so but look.
In moderation.
Yeah, in moderation, right? But that side that Dr. O is talking about, my father did not see that to emulate that from his dad. You know what I'm saying? That cuddly, tucking them in, hugging them, that wasn't my dad. He'll put a roof over your head, he'll put food in your stomach, he'll put clothes on your back, he may give you $1 or $2 if you had a good day. But that side, and that day, my father struggled, but he finally came around and said, of course I love my son, I love all my sons, But my sister-in-law was trying to get something out of him that we as now men still needed to hear. Like what she's saying back there. We still need to hear it at 48, 49, and 50, and 60.
Yes.
From dad, I love you, son. Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead, Doc.
To add to this conversation, one of the other things that I think is important, and I haven't heard throughout the conference yet, and that is to bring our children as a father to get them connected to a spiritual aspect. Whatever that is for, whatever your belief system is. I'm not have to aspire to anything specific. But some level of spirituality, I think is really important. And I think that sometimes it's just kind of overlooked. We look at the other things, we got to connect in the program, this and that, and all of that. But if there's no spiritual connection to all of this, I believe, and this is just my opinion, a lot of the times, a lot of the other stuff's not going to work. It's going to be difficult and challenging. And that's my point.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. Be holistic in your approach when you're doing your fathering programming. Again, you got to be mindful of your setting. My co-facilitator was my deacon at my church, and when he retired, he came to work for me. And so he and I, we still talk when we're driving to class. We still talk on a spiritual level, although we don't proselytize in the group. But if someone brings up the word, we're going to jump on it now. So,
open the door, you don't walk in.
If you open the door, I'm going to go through, right? But that's a good point. Try to look for that holistic approach. Even if you and your group, even if you and your facilitators are praying before you go into conference, praying before you go into session, praying before you go and meet with your grantors, to make sure you're on one accord. That's important. That's certainly important to make sure your household is on one accord. Yes, ma'am.
Just one more thing. One of other things that is difficult is that when he come to say, all right, can we cool down now and then talk later and have a hard conversation, which we agree to disagree. And that side of a man, when it shows up, it depends now how the woman has been trained. Because now the woman think you are not, you're too, you're too soft. Are you really a man? It really is a very interesting dynamic.
Thank you, man. If you don't know this, I'll tell you this. Men and women are different.
Wow.
And we're different in a number of different ways, right? And we're different in the way we problem solve. Men problem solve inward. We go into our cave and we start thinking, what should I do? If I get this boy this money, what are you going to do with my baby? Women problem solve. He's back here again. She's calling on the phone. She's talking out loud. Men problem solve by going in. And sometimes some women see that as, you're not going to do anything. Well, he's doing something, but he's doing it in a different way. He's doing it internally. He's going through the process internally before he comes.
Let's see, how do you spell availability?
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, let's go to the next question.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
True or false? Single men tend to be healthier than married men. Come on now.
Here we go.
Come on now.
It's a tricky question. Once you get married, that belly might come on.
Are you talking about financially or?
That's it.
What?
There we go. Pause. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Married men, on average, they live longer. They are wealthier than single men. A lot of guys don't want to believe it, but they are wealthier, they live longer, and they have better health outcomes. The two things we're now measuring in our group is not only life expectancy, but health expectancy. You know what I'm saying? So there's another measurement we're now measuring, not just how long men are living, but how long men are living healthy.
Quality of life.
There you go. So we look at two measurements now. American men tend to live longer than men in other countries worldwide, But if you look at men of Asian descent, they tend to be healthier than American men. There you go. So it's two measures now we're measuring, not just how long men are living, but how healthy are they living. Men tend to beat their bodies up at a younger age. The risk question we had there, You know, we want to drink and run and this and that, and you know, and you know, and they say, take a licking and keep on ticking. You know, suck it up. Don't show your, you know, don't show your feelings. Don't cry. You know, men tend to beat themselves up physically and emotionally. You know, so married men, on average, when we look at those measures tend to be healthier across the board than single men.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
All right. We had about 20. We're gonna stop at. We're supposed to stop at 11:30. We're gonna stop at 11:45.
Okay. So where should fatherhood course to take place? Where do you think that a good place will have a fatherhood course? Central location in town, classroom setting, near public transportation, and a community action agency. Where do you think that they should take place? Again, there could be more than one answer to this question. Across the board again. Any of all of these are correct answers. You know, I told you the story about being called by St. Mary's County, which is an hour away from here, 2 hours away from where I live. Try to find an area that you're centrally located for your classes, if possible. Certainly a setting where you have a whiteboard or some overhead projector, a classroom setting where you can have some chairs and it can be comfortable temperature-wise. You know, you want the men to feel like that setting is conducive for them, for learning, you know, for engagement. Okay. Near public transportation, I live on the Eastern Shore. We don't have metro. We don't have a great bus system. You know, it's one of the things when I was an elected official that was always brought to my small community meetings. When we're going to get more buses, we're going to get more cabs. So public transportation is certainly important, depending on where you live. And again, if you're working within an agency or if you are embedded within an agency, those resources that agency can bring to your men are vitally important. I work with the Neighborhood Service Center in Easton. I work with Delmarva Community Services in Dorchester County. And working with those agencies under that one rooftop, if a man needs something, he's short on his rent, his eyeglasses broke, he needs a bus token, you know, we have funds where we can help them too, but these agencies have greater funds that they can tap into to help these men out. Dr.
Oh, yes. I work out in Delaware County in Pennsylvania, and we are attempting to create a strong relationship between Healthy Start and Head Start. Mm-hmm. And we have a program coming up June 9th. And even rather than saying fathers, right, the fathers who are in Head Start, the director wanted to say for positive fatherhood role models. Okay. So expanding it. So my question to you is, and I don't know if it's here or later, we talk about grandfathers who are, you know, serving that fatherhood role, or uncles. Yeah. So even though I know we're using the term father, but it's probably father-related activities. So I didn't know if you were going to talk about how do the special needs of that grandfather, right? The special needs of that uncle. Yeah. It's time to talk about that.
It's not, thank you, Dr. O. It's not in this presentation, but you're absolutely right. Again, go back and remember what I said about the National Fatherhood Initiative. You go on their website and look at their logic model. They talk about that second cohort of men who come in, who may have had that uncle, who may have had that coach, that played that father role in their life. Okay, may not have been dad. He wasn't dad, but he gave them some semblance of what a father should sound like. You know, he listened to them. He helped them, told them how to problem solve. Maybe told them how to deal with his money, right? So you're absolutely right. It's wonderful and great if it is that biological dad, but it may be the stepdad. You know, it may be mom's boyfriend. You know, we say in our group, because we understand the society that we live in now, that cohabitation is not a dirty word. You know, and I make that very clear to my men. You know, even if you and her are not living under the same household, you still have responsibility to that child.
Amen.
You still have responsibility to that child. I say to my guys who are in prison, you know, although you're here, you still have a responsibility to that child. I had a guy who was in prison and his child was just born. He would talk to his girlfriend on the phone, And, we were talking about some things. And I said, when you and her are talking, does she ever put you on speaker? And he says, I don't know. I said, ask her to start doing that. Because he needs to start hearing your voice. I'm doing a presentation in a couple of weeks with moms. And it's called The Expecting Father, is the name of the presentation. And we're talking about some of the things they talked about in the other room. The soon-to-be dad, the soon-to-be mom. And that child, even in the womb, as that child is growing, is still being impacted by the things outside the womb.
Right.
So if you're not there physically, putting them on speaker and letting that child hear his voice is one way to hopefully start building those bonds between that child and that father. Okay, we got 3 more here. Fatherhood groups works best with community action agencies. This, of course, is true. I mean, somebody got it wrong, but this, of course, is true. Okay. I guess the key word here is best.
Best, yes.
Yeah. If you're embedded within an established agency, and a lot of times when you're first starting fatherhood programming, unless you got some good grant writers on your team, you're generally working with another established agency. Social services, the health department. In our particular case, I work a lot with Maryland Community Action Partnership, MCAP. Because those agencies are already established, they already have the staff that you're going to need, the case managers. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't have a case manager working with you, the facilitator, find one. Case managers make your life so much easier as a facilitator. They really do run the program. So if you can get within a community action agency, Department of Social Services, Health Department, those type of agencies, they do work best because they give you more options around your table to help that man, whether it's housing, transportation, clothing, whatever the case may be. Next. Quiz. Which should not be a part of fatherhood program? The key word here is not. I'll give you a clue. Which should not? Class meals, evidence-based curriculum, guest speakers, personal judgment. Which should not be a part of your...
All right.
Look, I love guest speakers because I don't know everything, So I'm going to be getting a lot of your cards before I leave here today. I am always bringing in guest speakers to talk to my man. We work a lot with the Upper Shore Workforce and Development Board. They come down and talk about training and job options. Work a lot with the health department. They came in recently and did a presentation on vaping and smoking and tobacco habits. So using your special guest speakers just helps broaden your program. Again, we want to meet the men at whatever level of need they may have. So we do bring in the health department. We do bring in different job training programs. We brought in a mentoring group to talk about the importance of mentoring. So I would say we definitely need guest speakers. What we don't need is personal judgment.
Yes. I was just going to say on the guest speaker, that brings a part of the level of validation for what you're stating, because if it's just me talking all the time, then it's like, yeah, okay. But hey, fact check me, and here's a way for me to be fact checked is by bringing someone in, or I would encourage you to go behind me and look this stuff up and make sure that I'm
okay. And we want those persons who are those have those expertise, that knowledge, right, to come in. Recruitment and retention works best when partnership with other agencies, use of social media, all of these, community presentations. Still got one person got it wrong.
Oh.
Okay, I got more work to do. All of those, oh, you pass it fast. All of those work. When if you can get out, or you should get out and do community presentations. Be proud of what you're doing. Especially if you're committed to fatherhood programming, you should never shy away from talking about what you're doing and the importance of what you're doing. So if you get invited to speak with VFW clubs or Rotaries or at the local schools or whatever the case may be, go. Bring your little, these are my little tracks, bring your little tracks,
I'm going to the next slide.
Okay. True or false? Recruitment and retention works best without the use of former participants. Come on.
Let's get 100%.
Recruitment and retention work best without the use of former participants. Without the use of former participants. Oh, there you go. Hey, grab that guy. I was sharing with you about the young man that we had in our group, and now he ran from our jail-based program to house arrest to face-to-face, and now he's off getting he got a certification in drug addiction, and he's now working for a drug rehab center. And this was a guy who dealt drugs. That was what he did. He dealt drugs. So I'm using him. I bring him with me to talk with certain groups. And we're doing a reentry workshop in June. We start on Thursday, and one of our first speakers is a guy who was a former inmate, who's now a business owner. He cuts my grass. He's a lawn care business. He's been cutting my lawn for 20 years, and so I'll bring him in because he's going to be able to reach these men at a level that I can't reach. And I know that he's going to reach them at a level that I can. Why? Because he's been there. I can't talk to these men about what it is being locked up. I haven't been locked up. I can't talk to these men about doing a 15-year stretch or a 10-year stretch and what it feels like to be away from my family. I can't speak to that, but he can. So why should I fake it when I got the real thing? I can bring him in and let him do the class that night, and I sit down and listen. Again, I'm greedy like that. I'll bring you in. If you say something I like, I'm gonna use it. I have no shame. I'm gonna use it. What's the next one? True or false? We got about 5 minutes left.
Yes, sir.
Group outings, bowling, fishing helps strengthen bonding. Well, of course it does, right? I think we can just say, yeah, this is true. Bowling, fishing, baseball games. You ladies got this right? Bowling, do whatever you can to get your guys out of the classroom. I mean, it's nice to be in the classroom. I get it. But I get them out, and I get them out. We go eat dinner together. We go bowling together.
I am curious who that is.
I think they're just playing with us now.
I think.
What's the next one?
All right.
Quiz. Let's see if we can get to these last 3 slides. Multiple choice. Professional network should be included. Professional networking should be included. Professional networking should be included in your group facilitation with your participant, which means employment services, housing and sheltering services, utility services, mental health and substance abuse services. The question is, professional services should be included, right? Yes.
Yeah, multiple choice. Yeah,
good. Multiple choice is correct. Yeah. You again, and that's why it's important for your facilitator to know his community, right? Because he needs to know what's out there. If I'm there to help you, I need to know what's out there to help you. What's the next one?
Okay.
You got 3 more? 2 more? True or false? Mentoring men will not strengthen bonding. See, optimal word.
Come on, let's get 100. Let's get 100.
Mentoring men will not strengthen bonding.
All right, yay!
We got it now. Absolutely. Spend time with your guys. When we go out to dinner, and I told Ricky, I told the guys, when we go to dinner, and we don't talk about class. I said, don't bring up anything about a lesson. Or don't bring up anything I said last week. Mr. Peck, well, last week you said, no. We're here to have fun. You talk to me about the baseball game. You can talk to me about my Cowboys. But we're not going to talk about class because guess what? We want to be here to talk about fun stuff.
Yes.
You know, what do you got planned next week? What are you doing for vacation? You know, so let's not talk about class. You got to get some fun time in there. You know, our youth group is called the Pride. You know, the P stands for being proactive. The R stands for being respectful. The I stands for being intentional. The D stands for being determined. And the E stands for being excited. We want these young men to be excited about their life, to be excited about their future. So have fun. Learn how to have fun. Not everything has to be serious. You know, I don't wear a tie or jacket in class. I may wear my shirt, but I don't wear a tie or jacket in class. We want to have fun. Go ahead. What's next? Multiple selection again. A successful farming program takes what? It takes commitment, evidence-based curriculum, patience, partnerships. All the above? Who said all the above? All right, okay. That's it. There we go.
All right.
Yeah, we doing that.
Finish it strong.
I'm gonna leave a smile on my face. All of the above, yes. Look, if you're not committed to this work, then find something else to do. Because a lot of these men, the reason why they're in your group is because they haven't had committed men in their life. So if you're not committed to this work, find something else to do. Don't come in here sucking a job and just get a paycheck. There's other ways to earn money. You can come cut my grass if you need to. But be committed. You know, Lou, my co-facilitator, he does a presentation between commitment and contribution. And he said, we want men who are committed. We want men who are pigs, we call them pigs, right? The real men are pigs. You know, they're proactive, they're intentional, they're giving, and they're selfless.
All right.
You know, and we say, when you have breakfast in the morning, right, Corey, you have breakfast in the morning, you got that plate of eggs and bacon, right? And that breakfast in the morning, that chicken made a contribution to your breakfast. She laid that egg and went on about her business. But that pig
gave it all.
He made a commitment. So we always say real men are pigs. You laugh, right? You get it now. That makes sense, right? Real men are pigs. You know, being proactive about their life, being intentional about what they're doing, giving of their time, and being selfless. Being selfless. So real men are pigs.
All right.
Next one, and I think we're done.
So when they call you a pig, that's a compliment.
We got the t-shirt. When we wear the t-shirts out in the community, we really get a double look. Right? You said real men are what? They're pigs. What other parts of a successful farming program? A trained facilitator, comfortable surroundings, supportive host, agency, and improving curriculum. Yes, we need all of that. We need all of that. I don't care how good of a facilitator you are. You need a curriculum that has been proven and tested. Find something out there. There's plenty of stuff out there. Trust me. I use NFI. I like NFI's product. I use all, Inside Out Dead. I use the mothering program, Understanding Dads for Moms. So NFI is what I use. But I also use other stuff as well. I use other writers as well. Find a supportive agency, proven curriculum, comfortable surroundings, classroom surroundings where they can feel comfortable, and a trained facilitator. Do some kind of training. What's next? The last one.
All right, we got the score. There we go.
The last one, true or false? Program evaluation assessments are not important for success. The optimal word here is not. Program evaluations and assessments are not important.
Get 100%. Yeah, all right. Finish strong.
Don't be afraid to sit down with your director, your grant writer, and speak with them about, what are you looking for from me? What are my 4 or 5 objectives for this semester? What do you need to see? How many face-to-face visits do we need to see? How many outside activities do we need to have, for this year? Find out, and then after that semester is over, sit down with them and find out how you did. Okay, don't be afraid to be evaluated. Don't be afraid of an assessment. That's how you get better. That's how you grow. Excuse the mess, right? I'm still under construction. So there's going to be some areas that I need to grow in. There's going to be some things that we're doing in our classroom setting that we can get better at doing. We just started with this Kahoots. Do you guys like this? Was this okay?
Yes.
Thank you. My first time using it. So again, someone went to my class. So what did I do? I borrowed it.
Do you have a website or an email we could reach
I
out to
do,
if we have
yes.
further questions?
Absolutely. So look, my pleasure being here with you guys. Again, my name is Corey Pack with the Responsible Fathers Initiative of Eastern Shore, Maryland. These conferences are great. I have a brochure there. I'll leave some cards. I know I have some cards somewhere if you guys want to get a hold of us. We are here to serve the male population on the Eastern Shore to make stronger men, more healthier families, and more thriving communities. Thank you very much for your time.